We're going to take a little trip outside of Texas here and actually meet with Ohio Congressman Mike Turner and from the Dayton, Ohio area. One of the issues that we're very concerned about, we've been talking about, is the issue of the Delphi Salaried retirees actually losing their pension benefits. And I know you've been working very closely with them on trying to get those restored. Can you explain just a little bit to our viewers who might not be up to speed on this issue why it's so important and how it's impacting your constituents in particular?
Yes, well, thank you. And thank you for bringing attention to this issue, because it's one that has not gotten enough discussion, that I think is a complete and total injustice that actually came out of the auto bailout. The president, as you know, had appointed an auto task force within the Department of Treasury as they moved forward with what really, in effect, was the acquisition of General Motors. As General Motors went through bankruptcy, its former subsidiary, Delphi, was also going through the bankruptcy process, and there were a lot of agreements between the two companies that affected retirees and their benefits. As the two companies were proceeding, the administration made a decision as to whose pensions would be restored and whose pensions would not, whose pensions would be reduced. You know, generally, people would think that if they retired from a company, that they'd all be treated equally, and generally they usually are. In a bankruptcy proceeding, the Pension Guarantee Board, under the United States backing of pensions, looks for equity and balance, but the White House intervened in this process, and in doing so, reduced the pensions of the salary retirees while they fully upped or made whole the pensions from the UAW auto workers.
So in essence, they were taking money away from non-union people and giving it to the union people as like a political payback for help, I guess?
Well, you know, certainly politics plays a role. There's also an issue of the financial dealings between the parties with the auto task force and their own financial interests. But in the end, what we see is that there are individuals who, by contract, were guaranteed pensions, and in the process of the auto bailout, their pensions were reduced. The taxpayers ended up owning General Motors, and the union UAW workers had their pensions fully restored. And that type of inequity, where people were working together at the same company for years and have this disparate outcome, is just wrong.
I understand that the PBGC is basically the only agency with authority to make the decision to revoke a pension or suspend pensions or anything like that. But in this case, they were actually uninvited from meetings that were being held by the Treasury Secretary, Mr. Geithner, and excluded from that process.
Yeah, generally, when you see a bankruptcy, you'll have, you know, the PBGC, you'll have the bankrupt entity, you'll have the creditors, and the PBGC is supposed to stand in the shoes of those who have pensions to ensure that their interests as a creditor in the bankruptcy are honored and made whole. In this instance, because Treasury was in effect buying the bankrupt, and Tim Geithner is on the board of the PBGC, and obviously their connections with the United Auto Workers, and then also through TARP, many of the bondholders or lien holders were financial institutions that were subject to Treasury's pressure. You ended up having a deal that Tim Geithner got to structure because he was on all sides of the transaction. There was no balance of the varied interests. So you see, the Pension Guarantee Board then having their authority weakened as Geithner exercises the decision making.
So basically, you got four guys sitting in the room, and they're all named Tim Geithner.
Exactly.
That's just insane. Now, the bankruptcy courts generally are supposed to provide adult supervision for something like this and make sure all parties are protected. How does that get by without supervision in that area?
You know, this is all part of a lawsuit where the salaried retirees have now sued and said that entire process was a miscarriage of justice, and I believe that it is, and I believe that they should win that lawsuit. But this was a very unusual judicial process, and I'm certain the bankruptcy court wasn't really prepared for basically the federal government to come in to the court and basically be sitting in all seats, bringing forth then what they proposed as an equitable deal that was not.
I understand that the Delphi bankruptcy had been dragged out for many years, whereas the GM bankruptcy was shoved through in 44 days.
Expedited, yeah.
And, you know, I guess in the process of all of that speed, process gets lost in the rush to get it done.
That's right, there's not as much oversight when people are rushing to do something.
I understand a discrepancy as to where the money actually is. Was the PBGC that said that the pension fund was actually underfunded and that's why they were taking it, and the reality is that it was actually funded well enough to take care of the pensioners for many generations?
Yeah, and that's the dispute. The salaried retirees, who again, you know, they were middle management of this company. They were running the company and these programs. You know, when they look at the documents and the financials, they say that that Delphi and their pensions were completely misrepresented through the bankruptcy process. That in fact their pension had been funded sufficiently, and that it was entitled to liens on assets, many foreign assets that General Motors and Delphi had been expanding into, that would have been also sufficient, but those liens were waived, and to the benefit, obviously, of you know, some of the creditors, and obviously the ultimate owners, the taxpayers of the UAW. So there clearly is a sense that there are backdoor deals that are being done.
I've been writing a series titled The Lawless Presidency, and this morning we heard the Judiciary Committee hearing on that very topic, and it was very interesting. But this whole issue with Secretary Geithner basically playing all sides and these Delphi retirees not having any representation in the process, I think that's a clear example of this.
It's absolutely wrong. I mean, the PBGC is supposed to be the fiduciary, standing in the shoes of the pensioners and protect them. And we clearly see from the emails that we've made the administration release, and they're still resisting releasing both the documents necessary for the litigation and as part of the congressional investigation. But the ones that we've seen show that clearly, you know, they were pushed aside. Treasury, the Auto Task Force, you know, ran this, and they did so to the damage of these retirees.
That really is amazing. That you don't think that something like that can happen in America. You know, the equal protection under the 14th Amendment. It just doesn't really seem like this kind of thing that could happen, and yet it does. Is this just the tip of the iceberg, or are there other cases out there? I've heard of cases where shareholders are being sued through the bankruptcy litigation trusts for doing nothing wrong other than just buying stock on the stock market. Are we in danger of our stock investment system being corrupted because of this?
Well, I think the moment that the government, through TARP, stepped in to our financial institutions, basically into Wall Street, you subvert the system. The decision making no longer is just law and business decisions. You have political decisions, as we saw with the Delphi Salaried retirees. You have the possibility of corruption, where people make decisions exercising government authority to their own benefit financially, or to the benefit of their friends and cronies, if you will. And that exercise of that influence is very evident with this administration, and I think is of grave concern to the American people.
Now, for our readers who aren't that familiar with you and the service that you've been doing, I understand you're in your 10th year.
Correct. In
Congress, and you sit on the Oversight Committee, which is the committee that has actually been diving into this issue on behalf of the salaried retirees and looking at the equity on this. Where do we go from this? What is there a resolution through Congress, or is it going to be up to the courts to make this whole, or where does this go?
We're pursuing both paths. The salaried retirees are suing, and at the same time we're doing a congressional investigation. And our investigation is to try to discover what happened, how these decisions were made, what laws, if any, were violated. Similarly, the litigation is trying to do that. They're also asking for documents that they're entitled to under the judicial system, even though the administration's resisting, so that they can get a picture, and at the same time we're doing the same. This bears congressional oversight, it bears congressional investigating, and the whole fact that the administration has tried to thwart the ability for anyone to know what happened in this also, it should give everyone a pause. Because when they first did this, and they said, you know, we're going to do TARP, we're going to do the auto bailout, this is going to be great for America. If it's so great, well, why won't they share the information about what they did? I mean, it's taxpayers' dollars. This should be public, right? This is not Tim Geithner and President Obama's own little stock transaction. This is American dollars that are taxpayers' dollars. In this instance, not only will they not give us the information, but their own people had refused to testify. Under the TARP oversight, there is an independent inspector general that's reviewing all of the TARP transactions, known as SIG-TARP.
Right.
And the auto task force members who had been appointed by President Obama had refused to even talk to them to tell them what they did in the auto bailout and in this transaction, which is unheard of. It's unprecedented. So we had to pull them before Congress under threat of subpoena just to get them to agree to talk to the Inspector General. It's just absolutely unprecedented for someone who's sat in a position like that to say, not only will I not let you see my documents, I'm not even going to tell you what I did.
That's just amazing. Now I understand Senator Brown from Ohio has come up with a solution to this that involves taxpayers spending more money. That's not surprising, I guess, coming from that side of the aisle, but is it necessary for taxpayers to spend more money to fix this problem? Is Senator Brown kind of off in left wing on this?
Well, I think his particular bill certainly has a problem. And one, it's obviously born of the political environment that we're 60 days out from an election, and so he drops a bill that clearly is not going to move anywhere in the Senate. But the Delphi Salaried believe that they have a solution to this that would not result in additional taxpayer dollars and that would completely satisfy their pension and the pension obligations. There are other places, though, that we also may need to look as we go through this. Ultimately, the source of those funds, the Delphi Salaried retirees believe, are sufficiently present at the PBGC and within this transaction to satisfy them. Senator Brown's bill is about selling General Motors stock at a value that it's never in immediate future is going to reach. So it's an accounting transaction that actually results in $0 for the retirees.
This wouldn't be the first time that the Democrats have put forward a bill with no intention of passing it just to make themselves look good. Congressman, we appreciate your time and the effort that you're putting into this. Is there anything else that you'd like to say on this issue, and can we count on you to follow up with us on where this goes from here?
Absolutely, and what I'd like to do is of course, again, thank you again for making this an issue that people can become aware of, because through bringing attention to this, of the injustice that has occurred, we both can address it, but also we hold this administration accountable for how they're subverting our system.
Well, thank you again. We appreciate it and look forward to hearing for a solution to this issue that makes these people whole, and maybe we can just get rid of that lawless administration at the same time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.